Ashes Reborn. Launched in 2015, canceled about 3 years later, and relaunched earlier this year. So how does it play, and what do I think about it? Well, let me tell you. I'm Chris Steele, and this is Tabletop Game Talk, a show where we talk about all types of tabletop games and gaming topics. So, Ashes is a expandable, competitive card game. Typically played one-on-one, but can be played multiplayer as well. The base box comes with everything you need for 6 different Phoenixborn in the box and 4 different types of energy, magic, power that are represented by dice. So what I want to do is cover the brief basics of how the game plays. If you want to see a official how the game plays, then you can watch It Played, which has a Ashes Reborn how to play video that was sponsored by Plaid Hat Games, the publisher of the company. I am just going to give you the information I need to give you so that I can, tell you what I think about the game and why I like certain aspects of the game and what I might not like about it. So, let's start out with taking a look at the Phoenixborn, because that's really the heart of your deck, and that's where you're going to start anytime you open up a new deck or you start playing the game. So, we're going to take a look at Cole, who's one of the original, one of the Phoenixborn in the base game. And right away we can see he has a number of different abilities on his card, and he has a special card that goes along with him. All the Phoenixborn have some kind of card that is just unique to them. They are the only ones that can include it. When we look at a particular Phoenixborn card, though, besides the name at the top, we can see right at the very beginning, we can see that there's a battlefield number, there's a big number in the middle, and then there's a spellboard number. The big number in the middle is the amount of life they have. Once they've taken that much damage, they lose, you're out of the game. Last Phoenixborn standing wins. That's the long and short of it. We can also see the spellboard is the battlefield, and the spellboard are 2 other numbers, and these numbers can vary greatly. They usually are somewhere between 3 and upwards of 10. I've seen 10 on the battlefield line. The battlefield is how many units you can have in play, and if you don't have enough room on the battlefield, you can't put more units in play. And your spellboard is the number of active spells you can have in play. So this game uses dice, and this is a really bad picture of the dice, but it matches my shirt, so that's great. So there's some randomness in when you roll these dice, like what you can do with them. But the spellboard, I mentioned in my brief history, if you haven't seen the brief history of Ashes Reborn, there's a link in the show notes below. You should check that out. But I mentioned there that even though this game is shuffled cards and rolled dice, it's one of the least random of all of the dueling card games. So let's go back real quick and finish looking at our Phoenixborn here. So we can see he has a special ability. In this case, it's called Slash. And the little star symbol there is a secondary action. You have a main action and a secondary action you can take in your turn. This is a secondary action. In this case, you're going to discard 1 card. You choose a player, discard, deal 1 damage to target unit they control, or deal 1 damage to their target Phoenixborn if they control no units. So essentially, Cole can do a point of damage to a unit on the other side. Damage is persistent, sort of. Some units can heal. Most units have some kind of healing, but it's not as much as their life. So this just says, hey, I'm going to do a point of damage. And if you have no one there to take this point of damage, I'm going to do another point of damage to you. Cole also has an action spell. And the interesting thing about all of the cards that you can play is underneath the title of the card, in this case 100 Blades, is the type of card it is and where it goes when you play it. So this is an action spell, and it goes into your discard pile when you play it. It requires a main action, which is that little wheel symbol there, and it requires 2 generic dice. So just when we're, again, looking at the dice, we see we have the power symbol, which is, in this case, the goat and the frog. We have the class symbol, which in this case are the knives and the leaves. And then we have the generic symbol, which are the little circle, look like triangle-y things. So this requires 2 dice to play, is the best way to think about this. You deal 1 damage to target Phoenixborn, deal 1 damage to all opponents' units, and draw 1 card. So you play this, you get to draw a card, and you're doing a point of damage to Phoenixborn and all your opponents. So if you're playing multiplayer, you're actually doing damage to everything on the board. Kind of cool, and that's what, these Phoenixborn are powerful, and their special cards are powerful. They kind of identify these characters. So your Phoenixborn is one aspect of your deck, though. And if we notice here, there are, on this Phoenixborn and on most Phoenixborn, we're looking at generic resources. We're not looking at specific class symbols or specific power symbols, which would match to the color of the dice, which means that just because you choose this Phoenixborn doesn't mean that you're committing yourself to a certain set of dice or certain colors of cards that you can use. You can use them anywhere. You're going to get this card and this ability, and that's what you get to do. Some Phoenixborn do have specific dice that they align with, but even then, you're not super tied to those dice. You have a lot of flexibility here. So let's take a look at that flexibility. This let me move over here a little bit. The cards here that I'm about to show you is from Cole's deck from the starter set. So if you open up his deck, you're going to see all of these cards here. Just a great place to start to kind of give you an example of what you can do out there. So in this case here, we have 3 ready spells, and these spells are spells that go into the spell board, and you can tell because, again, Chant of Revenge, ready spell board. And the spell board is where it goes. The first thing is what it is. Strengthen, ready spell board. In order to put this onto your spell board, you need to pay the cost in the upper right corner. So in the Chant of Revenge, you are going to use a secondary action, and you need to pay for that with a dagger symbol. So let's take a look at our dagger symbols for a sec. So this is a sample board of what it might look like. Your playboard might look like, here's Cole, here's the battle line with 4 units in it. Here's my spell board with 3 different spells in it. Cole has a limit of 4 spells, but I'm only using 3 right here. He has a limit of 6 units, but I'm only using 4 right here. Over here, we can see that this is our dagger die, which is a black die, which is the class symbol on this die. And that's what we're going to use to pay for this cost here. Simple enough. Now, we could also use a goat symbol here because all of these can be used for anything below them. But we wouldn't be able to use a generic symbol. We can't go upwards yet. Sort of can later. You also notice here, for the power side, each of these have a dice power effect, which we'll get back to in just a moment. So, back to our Chant of Revenge. It's a secondary action. It's 1 die, and we can put it onto our spell board. For Strengthen, it's a main action, and it's going to require 2 dice. And in this case, it actually requires a nature die and a ritual die, or a ceremonial die, because it has a nature class symbol, which is the leaf, and the dagger, which is the ceremonial class symbol. Though, actually, spoiler alert, this is one of the things I actually dislike about the iconography of these cards, is everything's black and white as far as the symbols are concerned, so sometimes it's hard to tell just at a glance what dice each card uses. I really wish that there was a colored background on anything that used the different dice. So here, I really wish this were black. The generic symbol can be white. It can be just like transparent, but this would be nice if this had a nice black background with a red dagger, because then it would match the die much better. But they don't, and you get over it. You learn to look past that pretty quickly. But as a new player, it's kind of tricky to see, okay, what card is this? What card is that? But if you're using the starter decks, it's pretty simple to see because you're going to roll the dice and you're going to see the symbol. So that's not overly complicated. So Strengthen requires 2 dice, and Summon Iron Rhino requires 1. Now, something to know about the Summon Iron Rhino card is it's going to summon a unit. But that unit is not in your deck. That unit is going to be in a separate conjuration pile. We'll get to that in a second. Just want to point that out, that all of the cards that say summon and they have a spell book with some kind of, the spell books look different, but not that different. It's another one where like the spell book could have maybe had a picture of the unit that you're going to summon kind of sketched out in there or something that make it call out better, but that's okay. The art's fantastic. I'm really not complaining about the art. Units that you can have in your deck that you will draw, though, are called allies. And here are the 3 allies in Cole's deck. Allies will be played directly onto the battlefield, and you can tell because this ally battlefield in the subject line or in the title. Allies have 3 main stats that go along with them. You have attack, life, and recovery. So most allies will have some kind of recovery. Conjurations oftentimes may or may not, depending. Conjurations you can keep bringing back over and over. Allies, once they're discarded, unless you have something to get them out of your discard, you're never going to see them again. There is a limit of 3 of each card in a deck. So each of these allies exists in Cole's base deck 3 times. But you get to decide how many you want. You don't have to put 3 cards of each of them. You can put one of these and one of these and one of these. But typically, deck construction 101 is you want consistency, so you want as many of each card as you can, with a few exceptions. All of these characters, all these allies have a cost, again, the upper right corner. In this case, all of them require your main action to put them out. The Anchor Knot requires a 1 die. The Hammer Knight requires 3 dice. So it's going to require a power symbol on the ceremonial side, a class symbol on the nature die, and then a die of whatever for the 3rd one. So that's expensive. 3 dice is expensive. And then your Iron Worker requires 2 dice, but they can be 2 of the lowest die. And then they have some kind of ability that goes along with them. And the nice thing about Ashes is all of the abilities. So when I'm looking at the Iron Worker, Overtime 2, what's after the colon is the rule. You don't have to remember what Overtime is. It tells you what it is. But once you know what Overtime is, Overtime 2 is a shorthand for knowing exactly what's going on. In this case, during the draw card step, you may draw up to 2 additional cards. So that's what Overtime is, right? So in Overtime 1, you can say, oh, that's 1 additional card. Overtime 5, it's 5 additional cards. Not necessarily a good thing, but you can do that. And all of these cards have those abilities, and all of the rules are on the card. So when you learn the basic rules of the game, how to put a card into play, the rest of the game is just the rules are out here. And that's so nice when teaching this game. The strategy is the hard part. Learning the rules is not hard. It's really quite easy. So, allies aside, let's take a look at action spells. Action spells are the type of cards where you play them and then they go away. And you can tell. It says action spell, discard. Great. I play it, I get an effect, and then it goes to my discard pile. The premise is the exact same, though. Both of these require a main action. The close combat requires a class symbol on our nature die. Actually, no, it requires a power symbol on nature die, so it requires the highest side, which only exists one per side. And then the expend energy requires any die. And that's it. Do what they say and move on. So now let's take a closer look at how summon spells work, because they're a little different. Not really. I mean, there's a number of different ways that conjurations can come out. The summon is just the most common one. So here's Summon Iron Rhino. Again, to put the spell into play is simply pay the 1 die you need with the leaf on it, and it's in play. To use it, though, later on in a turn where you have another main action, so you're going to go back and forth, and we'll cover the phases in a second. In order to use this card, you're going to, anyway, you're going to use a main action, and then you're going to, this little upside down triangle is focus. And these are these little tokens that you're going to put on it. You're just going to pop it on the die. So I will pop this here, and that focuses this Iron Rhino. Now I need to spend, in this case, 6 symbols. This is a 6, and you can see it better here. It requires 6 dice to play this card. That's a lot of dice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see these dice here. Let me get rid of that. I'm going to see these dice here, and I'm going to take 6 of these dice and move them to my expended side. And in doing that, I am then going to be able to put out my Iron Rhino. Now, Iron Rhino, if he's already on the board, I can't do this again. We'll cover that in just a second. But if he weren't on the board, I could put him out here, and now I have the Iron Rhino. And he's big. Let's take a closer look at what he is. So the reason I can't put him out there more than once, because if you look at the Conjuration card, and I put the card backs here, so your Summon Iron Rhino has the Light Phoenix, and all of your Conjurations that don't get shuffled into your deck have the Dark Phoenix backgrounds, or the card backs. So Iron Rhino, though, in the bottom left corner, you can see there's a 1. And that 1 means that's how many cards exist. If you have Summon Iron Rhino, you're going to have 1 Iron Rhino Conjuration in your Conjuration pile. If he's already on the board, you can't play him again. If he ever dies or gets removed for any reason, he goes back into your Conjuration pile, and then you could play him again. Costing 6 dice is kind of expensive, but you can play him if you had the dice to do it. In this case, he has an attack of 7, which is significant. Remember, Cole only had 15 life, so if you're able to get 7 attack through to the other Phoenixborn, which the most, I'm just looking at the Phoenixborn all laid out right here, I think the most life that any of these Phoenixborn have are 20, and the lowest is, I believe 15 is the lowest. Yep. So all your Phoenixborn are going to go between 15 and 20 life. So 7 is a lot. 4 life is a lot. Most of your units are not going to be doing a ton of damage. If we look here, the Ironworker does 2 damage. The Hammer Knight does 3. Your Iron Rhino can take both of those without any problem, right? Just shrug it off. Now, something I mentioned about Conjurations, though, is they tend not to have a recover value. And when Iron Rhino takes 4 damage, he's going to be gone. Other units, say the Hammer Knight has a life of 4 and a recover of 2, at the end of every round, he's going to recover 2, he's going to heal 2 life. So he's going to stick around a little bit longer. Allies tend to be a little bit more sustainable than your Conjurations. So that's essentially how summons work. Now, there are some spell Conjurations where you play it and it has like a modification, like +2 attack to a unit or whatever, and it becomes a Conjuration attachment. And it always will tell you, because these cards are clearly marked under the name, it says Conjuration. On the back of the card, it is a dark backed card, so you know that this is not going to get shuffled into your deck. And even if you did shuffle it into your deck, you would immediately know if it came up at the top of your deck. If you're in sleeves, don't sleeve them in the same sleeves. Use different colored sleeves. And that's basically it. That's how summons work. Let's take a quick look at how the dice work. A little bit closer look here. We're looking at the ceremonial and nature dice because, or is it natural? Sorry. Because these are the dice that are used in Cole's deck. And again, we have a situation where each die has 1 power symbol, in this case, the goat and the frog, 3 class symbols, the knife and the leaf, and 2 generic symbols. Each of the high symbols can be used for the lower symbols, so you can always move something down. And the power symbols allow you to use a dice power effect as a secondary action. So in the case of the frog, you can, as a secondary action, you take one of your frog dice, move it to your expended side, and you deal 1 damage to target unit. Boom, that's it. And it's a secondary action, you just do it. There you go. I think it's actually side action is the term they use. For the ceremonial one, you can spend a power die, and you can search your discard pile for an ally and place it into your hand, and then you deal 1 damage to your Phoenixborn. So your Phoenixborn takes a point of damage, but is able to pull an ally back in. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that just because I'm using Cole, it's not tying me to any specific dice. And if I decided I didn't want to use any ceremonial cards at all, I wanted to use 2 other types, or I want to use 3 types, and none of them were ceremonial on the cards, I may still include a ceremonial die in my die pool, because that ability of being able to pull something back from the discard pile is a pretty good ability. Now, I can only trigger it when it's on its power side, and that's only 1 of 6 times when I roll the dice at the beginning of my turn. But there are ways of changing the sides that you rolled. So there is a way of making this something that you can always do if this is important to you to, like, keep bringing back allies. So the reference cards are included in the box, and essentially, when you're playing, you're just going to take the reference cards that associate with the dice you're using, and there you go. So let's take a quick look at how the board is set up. This is directly from the instruction manual, and the one that's missing from here is actually your actually, I'm not sure what the one is missing from here, but anyway, all of your basic information here. You have your active dice pool, your expended dice pool, your tokens. There's 3 different types of tokens in the game. You have exhaustion tokens, which I showed you, which is the little upside down triangles. Health tokens and focus tokens. Certain things use focus to power things up. In the 3 spot there, you have your conjuration deck, which is technically face down, never shuffled, never needs to be shuffled. You can just look through it whenever you need it, but it stays face down, so your opponent doesn't necessarily know what you are going to pull out. And then you have your draw pile, and there you go. A space for your battlefield, a space for your spell board. You don't have to lay your board out this way. It's just the recommended layout. I personally tend to put my Phoenixborn behind everything else, and then I might have my draw and discard pile up further front, but I like to keep my Phoenixborn back. Your Phoenixborn can't actually attack, and when he is attacked, he doesn't do any damage back. She. There's a bunch of different Phoenixborn, so you can kind of set this up any way you want. And in the bottom right corner there, that's just the phases of play, which switch to here. We can see this is what the phases of play card looks like. A nice little card that just gives you reference of how you're going to go through the different turn order. Speaking of turn order, let's take a closer look at turn order now. And we can see, here, our first thing we're going to do, beginning of every turn, is we are in the prepare phase. So this is where you actually roll your dice. Now, your very first turn, you've already picked your 5 cards from your deck. So there are no mulligans, there's no random draw at the beginning. You get to go through your entire deck and choose any 5 cards you want. There are some exceptions in tournament play. There's a couple cards you can't choose, but that's an organized play rule. It's not necessarily in the rulebook rule. But for the most part, you pick any 5 cards you want. You can only have 1 of each card, so you can't take all 3 of my Hammer Knights, for example. I can only take 1 of each, but I can take 1 of every ready spell that I want to put on my board. And that's a great way to start. So you can just put all these spells out and you can start using them right away. So in any case, the start of your turn is you're going to roll the dice. You roll all of your inactive dice. There, you may have dice left over from your last turn. You're just rolling the inactive one. Then you're going to discard any number of cards you want from your hand, now that you've seen what dice you have available to you. And then you draw up to 5. If you can't draw, then you take a point of damage for each card you can't draw. And you go back and forth. If multiple people can't draw at the same time, you go 1, 2, 3. You go back and forth, so each of you take a point of damage. So depending on who's the first player, one person's going to lose their life first. It's not going to be simultaneous. So that's why you see the fatigue damage section down there. After your prepare phase, you go to player turns. The first player is going to take the first turn, and then it's just going to alternate back and forth. And you're going to keep doing that until both players' main action is a pass. Or if you're playing multiplayer, all players' main action is a pass. So your main action can be to pay a main action cost, which is that little compassy looking symbol. Or you can attack, or you can pass. You have to do one of those things. And as a side action, you can optionally pay a side action cost or activate a dice power, which the activated dice powers actually have the side action symbol in there, so these are sort of redundant, but it just kind of reinforces the fact that you can use a dice power. Or you can meditate. And meditating is how the randomness of the dice are mitigated. So what you can do is when you meditate, you can discard a card from your hand, or you can discard a card from off the top of your deck, or you can discard a card from your spell board. And for each, and you can do this as often as you want, and you do it one at a time. And for each one you discard, you can change any one of your dice in your active dice pool to whatever side you want. So if I have that one ceremonial die and I want to put it to the goat side, I can just say, something, as my side action, I am going to discard the top card of my deck and change this to the goat. And then as my next turn, I can use my side action to activate the goat dice power and pull back an ally from my discard pile. It costs a side action to do it, but those are the types of decisions that you get to make. And that's it. That's basically the gist of it. Now, most of the rules are on the cards. The idea is to do damage to your opponent's Phoenixborn. Of course, to do that, you're using combat, and combat, well, mostly combat. There's direct damage and stuff. But combat is going to be done, and it's the most complicated piece of it. So let's just take a quick look at combat. There's two ways that you can attack. You're going to choose one or more of your units in an attack, and you're just going to slide them forward and say they're attacking. And they can choose to attack a Phoenixborn, or they can choose to attack a specific unit. If they attack a specific unit, then they are... different units can decide to guard them. If a unit has a guard ability, they can guard a different unit. But if nobody of the units have guards, then you're just attacking that unit directly, and only the Phoenixborn can decide to go out and guard. But the Phoenixborn can only guard one unit once per round. So if the Phoenixborn does go up there, they'll take the damage, they'll protect the unit, but they won't be able to do that again. However, if you do damage, well, actually, if the attack goes through, you're going to be exhausted. And if the unit you're attacking attacks you back, they will be exhausted. They don't have to attack you back. And there's some strategic ways why you may not want to do damage back. If you're exhausted, you can't attack. So maybe it's like, all right, I'll take the damage. I'm not going to do damage back because I really want to use this unit to attack this other thing or attack the Phoenixborn or whatever. So that's attacking units. Attacking the Phoenixborn are a little bit more straightforward. You just say, I'm attacking the Phoenixborn. If there are any units there, any of those units can jump in front of the Phoenixborn and block. Sometimes damage is unblockable. Sometimes damage is unguardable. That's one thing. It's like units, when you're attacking a unit, they are guarded. When you're attacking the Phoenixborn, they are blocked. And that wording matters for some effects. But in any case, you're just doing damage, and if your damage gets through, you're putting damage tokens on there. If ever the life total of any unit or Phoenixborn is exceeded by their damage, they're eliminated. That's all there is to it. And if they're not, then at the end of the round, they're going to recover. And you're going to remove wound tokens equal to the recovery value. Each card will remove a single exhaustion token. There are ways to get multiple exhaustion tokens on a card. So if that happens, you might be down for more than one round. And then you're going to exhaust any amount of dice that you want in your active pool. You might do that because you want to re-roll those dice. So if you have like power symbols all over the place, you don't need to re-roll those. But if you just have class or generic symbols in there, you probably just want to exhaust them. So at the beginning of your next round, you can re-roll them. And that's essentially it. That's the game in a nutshell. It's really not that difficult to learn. And watch Rodney Smith's Watch It Played on the specifics. And I do want to go through one more thing before I have my final thoughts on this, and that is deck building. So deck building is very simple. I've alluded to it a couple times. You're going to pick a Phoenixborn. That Phoenixborn does not lock you into any other decision. You're going to pick 30 cards. Oftentimes, you're going to pick the same 10 cards and 3 copies of each one. That's a completely viable way. Your Phoenixborn special cards do not count against the 30 cards that are in your deck. Those are just added in there. So, but if you have like a variety of cards, you can have cards from all over the place. The only thing you want to make sure is if you do put a particular card in your deck, you want to make sure that you have at least some way to generate the dice symbols required to use that. Now you can meditate, and that'll allow you to basically turn your dice to whatever size they want. But if you want a 7 die deck, you could do that. You only get to pick 10 dice, though. So that's the final thing, is you're going to pick 10 dice. So if you want the easiest way to play is, you're going to pick 10 of the same die, pick a Phoenixborn, pick a bunch of cards that all work with that die. No problem. You're probably always going to have the resources you need. But if you want to mix it up and you want 3 dice from here and 4 dice from there and another, 3 dice from over here, you can totally do that. It's up to you. If you want to focus on using dice powers, I don't think it'd be a very efficient deck, but I guess you could just meditate everything to the power side of the dice and just use those to do ping damage. Ping, ping, ping. You could do that too. So there's just a lot of flexibility in this, and then the art is just amazing. Like I can't get. I don't know. I don't know anyone who's like dislikes this style of art. Maybe you like different types of art, but it's gorgeous. It's just the cards are amazing to look at. If I had one complaint about the art, it would be that the decks, the art for particular actions and abilities in the pre-made decks tend to match the art of the Phoenixborn. So when I start mixing and matching cards, I start to feel like there's almost an inconsistency with. It's like, wait a minute, I'm using Strengthen, and it works fine when I'm with Cole, but if I'm using Strengthen and I have, Mayoni, that doesn't make the same sense. But at the same time, the reason that's a problem is because the art's so good and so consistent. In Magic, the art doesn't have any kind of coalition, and I'm fine with that, right? So that's how petty I have to get to talk about the art. Couple fiddliness things. Some of the summons and some of the spellboard cards have a focus, and it's focus 1, focus 2. When you have multiple cards of the same in your spellboard, you stack them under each other, and then each one can be exhausted, and depending on. So if I have 1 extra card, I'm focused once. If I have 2 extra cards, I'm focused twice. And then they change the ability. So in Rhino's case, Iron Rhino, if I had 3 cards here, his focus 2 ability is reduce the activation cost of other spells, of this spell, by an additional 1. So instead of costing 6 dice, it only costs 4 dice if I had all 3 cards out here. The focus 1 and focus 2 is just always throws me off, because like, wait, is it focused 1 or 2? Because I have 2 cards, but that's only focused once, because the card is the additional. But I can also exhaust both of them. So that's a little fiddly. But again, it's one of those things that once you wrap your head around it, it's not that bad. Strengthen here only gets a boost if you have all 3 cards out here. It's a focus 2. Add 1 more to the unit's attack. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really have a lot I can complain about. I talked about how I would love if the symbols were color-coded. They're not. That's fine. I'm over it. The sorting out the cards is a little tricky because you have lots of cards that are mono dice. And so, like, here's all my ceremonial cards, right? It's like, these are all my ceremonial cards. But here are all the ceremonial and nature cards. So you can kind of see, it's like, okay, how do I really sort these out? I'm still working that out. Again, not that big a deal. Go to ashes.live and you can build your decks there, and you don't have to worry about, sorting your cards. You just need to find the cards at that point. I really like this game. I like this game a lot. It is fun. There are interesting choices to make. It doesn't play like anything else I've played before. The idea that like I can send one attacker forward to attack, and then you have to do something, and now he's exhausted, but I still have 3 other attackers, and I can use that as my main action later on. But now that he's exhausted, if you attack me, I can't use him to defend, but he can't actually defend anyway because he doesn't even have guard. So if you attack the Phoenixborn, he could defend, but if you attack the Hammer Knight, the Ironworker couldn't come over and defend him. But there are some cards that have the guard ability, and they can go over and defend them. So there's a lot of different nuancey things that you can like really think about. When do I use Cole's ability? Maybe I'm attacking here, so you can block with your 3 life thing because he's going to live. But then as my secondary action, I do another ping point of damage. But I don't have to do that right away because nobody heals until the end of the round, and we have multiple turns in a round. We're going to keep going back and forth until we're out of dice and out of things to do. Typically, that means you're out of dice. So the 10 dice that you're going to roll are more important to worry about than your cards. Because even though you only have 5 cards in your hand, you have only 10 dice, but these dice can power all your spellboard things. They can power your Phoenixborn abilities. So this is really your main resource, and you want to manage this. So when you're looking at a card and you see the Hammer Knight uses 3 dice to put it out there, it's a good card. But 3 dice is expensive. Now it has 4 life and 2 recovery, so Hammer Knight's going to be out there for hopefully a robust period of time, but who knows? So all of that stuff is like, there's just a lot of choices and fun choices to make. The there are multiple ways that you can play this game right now. The main way that, I mean, obviously playing it in person is the best way to go, but, yep, did that again. But if you want to play online, there is a online version of the game that is being in active development. I'm going to put a link in the show notes because right this very second, actually, nope, don't see it. But anyway, there's an online version of this game that's fan made and fan managed, but that's one way to do it. I'm actually playing it through a league with the Covenant casts, the Team Covenant's Discord league, which we play every Wednesday night. And if you want in on that league, this one has already started as you watch this video. But you just go to teamcovenant.com, go to their Ashes League, and you can subscribe. It's at $30 and it's 12 weeks. So 3 months at a time, so it's 4 times a year that they do the league. And as long as you participate in, I think, 8 of the 12 sessions, then you're going to get some alt art promo cards, which they're working with Plaid Hat to make everything like official and look great. And, you know, these promos don't change the game in any way. They are just alternate versions of cards that already exist, typically Phoenixborn and their alternate arts. So in this case, I might get alternate Cole and all 3 of his alternate abilities at the same time. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I may have misspoke. Yes, I did misspeak. Deck building. Let's go back to deck building for just a moment. I just noticed as I looked up that I said that the special ability cards don't apply to deck building. They do. You can see right here in the third paragraph. You can only include the Phoenixborn unique cards in your deck if you chose the associated Phoenixborn, and which is the unique thing. So you can only have them in your deck, but they also count against. So you're only going to have 30 cards, period. That's how many cards are going to be in there. So yeah, that is Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn. If you like dueling card games at all, this one's worth checking out. If you don't like dueling card games, this one's not going to win you over because you don't like dueling card games. But maybe you do. Maybe, yeah. Don't let the dice scare you. Like I say, I think this is the least random of all of the dueling card games I've ever played. And with a 30-card deck and the fact that you can start with any 5 cards you want, and the dice that are powering these cards can be easily modified, it just gives you a lot of options. Like, it really does give you a lot of control over what you're doing and what you're seeing. And yeah, it's worth checking out. So that's Ashes. This was Tabletop Game Talk. I'm Chris Steele. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, do all those YouTube things so I can help so you can help me build the channel, and talk to you next time.